Hello, this is Faith at Faith and Books again, and I'm very excited because I got tagged by Joey at Game of Authors with the Two Birds, One Stone tag, which was originally created by Sean the Book Maniac. So I think the protocol is that I should link to both the originator and to the person who tagged me, so I will do that in the description. Let me get started. The theme of this tag is two. Two, every answer, every prompt has something to do with the number two. So, prompt one, the second last book you read. So that is a little bit complicated for me because the last two things I've read were really short, and I don't know if they constitute a proper length of a read. I just finished reading this out loud, The 13 Clocks by James Thurber. So that's technically my last read, and my second last read would be De Profundis by Oscar Wilde. But that's just really a long essay. It's not really a book. So if I combine De Profundis and The 13 Clocks, that might be the equivalent of one book. And then I could say that my previous second to last read would be the Sophocles three plays, Antigone, Oedipus the King, and Electra, which I have a video about for my Classics Club spin. So that would be my second last read, or it could be De Profundis by Oscar Wilde, which is on my Kindle. All right, so that was prompt one. Prompt two, the second book from the top of your TBR. So I don't really have like a nice vertical stack of books that I can go to my second, the second book from the top. But I do have, next in line in my Kindle is a book that I'm looking forward to reading. Well, right now on my Kindle I'm reading Eden's Outcast about Bronson Alcott and Louisa May Alcott. And that's for A Year with Louisa May. That's hosted by Kate Howe. But after that, I'm going to read, what is it called? A Generation of Sociopaths, something about the baby boomers, because I kind of love to excoriate my own generation. So I'm kind of gleefully looking forward to reading that, although I may or may not agree with the author, I don't know. But anyway, so that, I'm going to say that that's my second from the top in my TBR. All right, the next, number three, is two-star reads. So I don't have any two-star reads because I just don't read two-star reads. If I'm not enjoying a book, I'm not going to struggle through it. If I don't feel like I'm getting any benefit from it, I just don't complete it. I don't know. My philosophy is life's too short and there are too many other books out there to spend my time reading. So unless I'm if I'm not getting anything out of it or it's just depressing me or something, I just don't read it. So I DNF. I did not know what DNF meant until I started watching Booktubers. But I just tend to just DNF instead of rating something 2 stars. So I look back at my Goodreads and everything's 3 stars or more. I just don't finish them if they're less than that. So sorry, can't really answer that one. Number 4. 2 great books by the same author. So I interpreted this as meaning that I'd only read 2 books by a great author. And so, I don't know, because my mind was running towards nonfiction and then Victorian literature. And so for nonfiction, I was scanning my list, and I've read 2 books by Paul Theroux, Theroux. I think it was last year I read The Old Patagonian Express, which is what was really interesting. He basically gets on the subway in Boston and just takes a series of trains and goes all the way down to the tip of South America. Really, really interesting, riveting read. I really enjoyed it. And then a couple of years ago, more than a couple probably, I read Riding the Iron Rooster by him, which is also about train travel through China. That was really interesting too. So I've read 2 books by Paul Theroux. And then in terms of nonfiction, I was I didn't even realize that Wilkie Collins had written more books, but I've read 2 books by him. His 2 most popular, The Woman in White and The Moonstone. And then just watching all the Booktuber booktube videos, I found out he wrote a lot more than that, so I might try him next Booktuber. Oh, I lost my thing. Okay. All right, so those were 2 great books by the same author, and I gave you a nonfiction and a novel category. So I broke that. For me, part 4 had part 4A and part 4B. Anyway, okay, number 5. 2 bails or 2 books you wish you'd bailed on, or 2 books you hated. So I'm going to make a big confession here. I'm going to do the 2 bails. I have bailed repeatedly on these 2 classics. The first one is Moby Dick. I've tried twice to read it in real book form, and I would always stop when it got to the middle section on the whaling, all about whaling in the 1800s. I just couldn't get through it. So then a year or 2 ago, I decided I would get over that by listening to it on audio. So I listened to it on audio, and I got through the whaling dissertation part in the middle, and then I started to move on into the next section, and then I forgot to listen to it. I just forgot to listen to it. And weeks later, I realized that I'd simply forgotten. And by that time, I'd lost all interest. So for some reason, my mind doesn't want me to finish Moby Dick. So I have seen the movie. I know how it ends. And for some reason, I just can't get through it. So Moby Dick, I've bailed on that. Another one that I've bailed on repeatedly is War and Peace. I know it's sort of a joke about how all the different names they have for characters in Russian novels. And I had that problem with, Brothers Karamazov, but I managed to get through it. But War and Peace, I just can't get any traction in that book. I've tried maybe 3 times to read it, and I just never get more than a quarter of the way through before I give up. It's so daunting. I have a really hard time remembering people's names anyway, just like regular American people that I meet. And to have these foreign names with all these variations, I get so confused. So War and Peace, I bailed on that one. All right, and then the next prompt is number 6. 2 favorite reads so far this year. Well, this year, I read the Chronicles of Barset series by Anthony Trollope. And I had read some of the books before, but this time I read all of them as a series. And the last book, the last Chronicle of Barset, to me was the absolute most perfect ending of a series. He tied up all these loose ends, yet it had its own narrative going too. And it just was the perfect last book in a series. I had such a book afterglow for days after reading that. It's a great, great series, and I just think it was the perfect ending. So The Last Chronicle of Barset by Anthony Trollope was definitely one of my favorite reads. And then another favorite read on a completely different wavelength is this book, Resisting Throwaway Culture, How a Consistent Life Ethic Can Unite a Fractured People by Charles C. Comesy. He is now one of my favorite people. He's a professor of ethics at Fordham University. And I read this book and it was like he was writing my soul. It's like everything I ever believed or thought, only he put it much more logically. It's a very well-written, systematic presentation of what a consistent life ethic would be. And I really, really love it. I love it so much I'm giving it to each of my kids for Christmas. Shh, don't tell them. So this definitely made a huge impression on me, and it's one of my favorite reads of the year. Okay, prompt number 7. 2 new favorite booktubers. So I'm pretty new myself, so everybody's kind of new to me, but Two that I really enjoy going to are Mommy's Reading Chair. She's a young mother. I think she's home for the year. She just had a baby a couple months ago, and she has a little 3-year-old boy. And she just writes about, and she's an elementary school teacher, and she just talks about all kinds of books. She reads more YA books than I am interested in. I mean, it's not that I'm always interested. It's not that I always read the same books that I need. I don't need to read the same books to enjoy a booktuber, because I like hearing about books that I probably won't get around to reading. But she also talks about children's books, and I just like her manner and her attitude towards things. She's just really enjoyable. I like her. Mommy's Reading Chair. And then the other one that I really love, and I really feel like a kindred spirit with, is Taking Tea with Catherine. She's just so, I like her sense of humor and her common sense approach to things. And she's just got the same, I mean, I think I have a lot in common with her in terms of taste. And she's just someone nice to visit with. I like, when I watch her, I get that New York vibe, which is nice. So I really enjoy Taking Tea with Catherine. And I'll link both of those also in the description. And then prompt number 8 is a book you've read twice. So I had a hard time thinking about there are many books I've read twice. Which one am I going to pick? But then, as I was scanning my bookshelves, thinking about it, I remembered this book, Otto of the Silver Hand by Howard Pyle. Howard Pyle is just this incredible illustrator, and he also wrote these beautiful books. I guess they're for children, but adults can certainly appreciate them too. It's almost like fairy tale-ish. He was an incredible illustrator. It's just beautifully written. Really, it's just the language, and it's subtle and charming and really moving. So I read it out loud to my kids. And then years later, I thought, I should read other books by Howard Pyle. But it was one of those circumstances where I thought, no, I think I just have to reread this one because I remembered enjoying it so much. So this one is, I definitely read this twice, and it's like I have to get this out of my system before I can move on to his other books. So there's one, he's got another famous one called Men of Iron that I want to read. That's also set in the Middle Ages like this one. And a lot of people really like that one. In fact, maybe that's the one that's slightly more popular. Anyway, but I highly recommend this book to anyone who's interested. Okay, let's see. Prompt number 9 is 2 fabulous quotes from books you've read recently. So for that, I think I'll go back to Resisting Throwaway Culture. And in the back of the book, he lays out 7 premises or principles that the consistent life ethic rests upon. And I think I'll just read them. Let me show them to you. And I'll just pretty much just read the bolded parts. So this is Charles Comacy, the ethics professor at Fordham. So these are the principles of a consistent life ethic. Number 1, it is always wrong to radically reduce someone's inherent dignity for some other end, especially by aiming at their deaths. 2, use of violence ought to be restricted at every turn. And then I'll skip some of it. When protecting one's vulnerable neighbor, it is permissible to use deadly force, but mercy requires that such violence must be strictly regulated and the absolutely last option used. Number 3, in every circumstance we must give priority to both protecting and supporting the lives of the most vulnerable, and especially those who cannot speak up in their own defense. Number 4, resist appeals to individual autonomy and privacy which detach us from our duty to aid and slouch toward a relativistic culture which rewards the powerful and discards the vulnerable. Number 5, resist language, practices, and social structures which detach us from the full reality and dignity of the marginalized. Number 6, go to the peripheries. When there is risk, show hospitality and care for the stranger. And then number 7, acknowledge mutuality, not only between human persons currently living, but also between current and future generations, and between human persons and the rest of non-human creation. So that's Charles Comacy. And then my other quote from a book I've read recently, I'll just read the first few lines from The 13 Clocks by James Thurber. Let's see. Here we go. Once upon a time, in a gloomy castle on a lonely hill, where there were 13 clocks that wouldn't go, there lived a cold, aggressive duke and his niece, the Princess Saralinda. She was warm in every wind and weather, but he was always cold. His hands were as cold as his smile and almost as cold as his heart. He wore gloves when he was asleep, and he wore gloves when he was awake, which made it difficult for him to pick up pins or coins or the kernels of nuts, or to tear the wings from nightingales. I'll just stop there. Let's see, and then prompt number 10 is tag a number of booktubers. It must be divisible by 2. So I'm going to tag 4 booktubers: Kate Howe, Remembered Reads, Johnny Keene, and Old Blues chapter and verse. And I'm not sure the protocol. Do I link them also? I think I will. I'll go ahead and link them in the description. So thank you so much, Joey from Game of Authors. I so appreciate your kind words and tagging me in this tag. I really am. I just love BookTube. I love the community. I love talking about books and discovering new booktubers. So thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it. Bye-bye.